Jim Horton, WBA, YWA, came silent key this past Monday, March 16th at 6:30 p.m. Jim would have celebrated his 75th birthday on March the 18th, and he dearly looked forward to that. Jim and his wife Sherry moved to Louisville in September of 1976. 96, I'm sorry. Jim was Jim was licensed in 1975 in Michigan, and he loved HF and 6 meters. 6 meters was his favorite band. The club was founded. Jim joined our club as one of the original members when we were a group of about 15 and held our meetings at the Fat Cow Barbecue on Valley Ridge Boulevard. It didn't take long for Jim to become an active and backbone member in our club. He was first elected as technical director for our club, and he held that office to this day. He also started our Wednesday evening information and help net and was the voice of this net as net control most Wednesday evenings unless he was traveling. He loved calling the net and was excellent at convincing others less experienced to take an active role and to try to do that. Not that he really ever wanted to give up the job. He also worked the national traffic system. While he was in Michigan, he was the state traffic manager for many years, and Bill, you can remember that. He would check into several nets each day that he was around the radio and assisted in passing traffic an untold amount. This past Tuesday, the 7290 traffic net recognized him for his services. Jim was a life member of ARRL. He was the first and only at this point recipient of a certificate of merit from our ARRL North Texas section manager, Steve Lott. He was very proud of that honor, and the fun part about it was that we got to present it to him at our meeting, and we kept it quiet for quite a while before he received the award, which was a total surprise to him. Our membership roster stands at approximately 50 individuals now, and every time one of those members has been welcomed by Jim, and the majority of us have been the recipient of his vast knowledge of amateur radio, myself especially. And any one of us ever needed help with a problem, Jim was right there offering his assistance. He was an early riser, and he was up before the chickens most every morning, 6 days a week, to get on the air with a group of longtime friends around the country, a group which he was a co-founder of, known as the Morning Group. They have a long history of never-ending friendship. He also introduced many of us to this net, and we are now participants. A highlight for Jim was face-to-face meetings of this group at various locations, Dayton and Orlando. In February of 18 and 19, at the Orlando Hamvention, Ron and I had a pleasure of meeting up with these guys and enjoying 3 days of sharing old memories and making new ones. Thus far, it sounds like Jim's life rotated around amateur radio and Laura. That's far from the fact. He enjoyed his family most of all. His love for his wife, Sherry, and kids and grandkids were above all the foremost in his life. He was very active in his church, and he very much accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior a long time ago. He enjoyed afternoon swims with his grandkids, hunting and fishing with his kids and grandkids, family meals after he'd done the barbecuing, hooking up his fifth wheel camper and heading out across the country. He enjoyed cruising on big ships with friends. He most of all enjoyed Cub Scouts with his grandson Max, and much more. Following the slideshow, we will offer an opportunity, like Ron said, for everyone who would like to share their memories with Jim to please do so.
What I'd like to do now is offer the opportunity for everyone to express your thoughts about Jim. What did Jim do for you? How long have you known him? Stuff like that. Anything you would like to share with the group, we'd certainly offer you the opportunity to do that. I'm going to throw Mike CDQ under the bus because I know he has something, and we'll let him go first. So go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, Jim is a special person. I have known him but 1 year, but I'll tell you, upon meeting him, there's something in his eyes and his look. He reflected something of friendship, and I accepted that. I will always consider him to be a friend. He is a friend. I've got a reading here. Really, it's brief. I'll go as fast as I can. God saw you getting tired, and a cure was not to be. So he put his arms around you and whispered, "Come to me." With tearful eyes, we watched you, and we saw you slip away. And though we love you very dearly, we could not make you stay. A golden heart stopped beating, hard-working hands put to rest. God broke our hearts to prove to us He only takes the best.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. Let's see. Let's go to the morning group. Any guys in the morning group that would like to say something? If I have audio on a few of you, but not very many. So I'll just call your name, and if you'd like to say something, fine. If not, that's fine too. So Harold, you're the first one on my list here. If you now, Harold has been not only part of the morning group, but Harold is also was a former co-worker of Jim's, so he's known Jim a long time. So Jim, Harold, if you'd like to say something, go right ahead.
Okay, can you hear me, Ron?
Yes, sir, you're fine.
All right. Yes, and when I first met Jim was in '99, and he was the man that that hired me to work for, at that time was Control Systems International, and we hit it off right off the bat. Matter of fact, I didn't know he was a ham radio operator, and he didn't know I was one either whenever he hired me. And after several months went by, we had a chance to, as we got to know each other a little better, begin to share some of our interests. And after that, it was every time we had a chance to talk ham radio, that's what we did. And to make it as brief as I can, Jim took me under his arm and really mentored me in the building automation work that we did, and we got to travel a lot across the country together and work on projects together. And he always, one thing we had in common was knowing the Lord, and that's probably the biggest impact Jim had on my life, was being able for us to share the Lord with each other and to pray together. We'd be on a job having problems, and Jim would he would just stop and say, "Let's pray," and things would work out for us. It's a lot of fun memories of, there's one trip in particular that we got to go to Maine together to work at the place called the Earth Station. And we took our fly fishing gear with us. And when we checked into the motel in Boston, Massachusetts. He opened up his golf bag, and the people that do you checking your bags and everything at the airport had laid out his hat. It was at the top, the vest was in the middle, and the boots were down at the bottom. They had arranged it like someone had been stuffed into his golf bag, and we got a laugh out of that. And we were there in Maine for about 10 days, and it was a memory I'll always have of being with Jim and having fun when we had a chance to, after work, to go fly fishing and canoeing and that sort of thing. So with that, like I say, Jim has loved the man very much, and it was hard to lose him, and looking forward to the day that I see him again. So back to you, Ron.
Okay, Harold, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's move on to Scott. Scott Simmons, WA4DOS. Scott is in Pine Island, Florida. Would you like to share something, Scott?
Yeah, where do I start? Had met Jim probably 20 years ago on 20 meters. Bill, WD8KUF, introduced me on 20, and we had a little group in the morning men that would get together and share and talk. I really didn't know at the time that he was a Christian. Found out later he was a brother in Christ, and that was a big draw, if you will. Someone that I could absolutely relate with in so many different ways. But the first time I met him personally, here he was. This is an example of Jim, and he was always doing for someone. He drove down to Florida with pulling a trailer. He was helping it was a silent key, and I'm trying to think Jim's last name that had died, and I think he was a friend of Jim's dad. And he came down with James, his son, and with Hayden, and I think Hayden was about 3 at the time, his grandson. So got to meet him for the first time, and I know we had a meal together and shared, and I'd seen him a few times, maybe 3 or 4 more times at the Ham Fest when he'd come to Florida, and he'd come to and visit our church, I think twice, and over here to the home. So really enjoyed seeing he and Sherry. But he was always there for someone. He was one that we could talk about Christ. And, that thought came to me. I didn't realize his birthday was just after he had passed. And, I'm thinking absent in the body and present with the Lord. And here he is celebrating his birthday with Jesus. And what Harold had said, he had shared many times that, and I could agree, because I had done similar where we'd be having difficulties at work and there'd be something going on and I would stop and pray. And Jim shared that same thing, that every time Christ came through and took care of that issue, something as small as that. So Jim was more than happy to share that with everyone. And just anyone that had any kind of a problem, he was there. And I'm sure each of us will have that opportunity to be able to share that he was there helping everyone. He was interested in everyone else. He was one of the most friendly guys I'd ever come across, and honestly one of the closest friends I'd had that I'd been able to share Christ with. So that was we're all going to sorely miss him. So back to you there, Ron. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for joining us this morning. And believe me, you sound different on this headset than on the headset I was on 45 minutes ago listening to you. But good to have you with us this morning. Bill, WD8KUF, would you like to say something, sir?
Yeah, good morning, Ron. Is the audio okay?
Audio's fantastic.
Thank you. Well, Jim and I go back 48 years. We worked together at Robinson Industries. It all started out with over a CD, believe it or not, and developed into amateur radio, which I am grateful for. And Jim and I got a lot of experimenting on VHF, UHF. 6 Meters was a great band. We thoroughly enjoyed that. But we fooled around with antennas, building whatever, and later on, James joined us when fly fishing. We lived on the Tobacco River up in Gladwin. And Jim and James and I'd take the boat and we'd go over and hit the flats there and catch bluegill on our fly rods. Boy, what a blast. We've traveled, we've motorcycled together, we've a few thousand miles on the motorcycle together. And we've traveled with RV together, Bronson, and monkey around a little bit at the campground with some QRP. And my late wife, Patricia, and I have visited with Jim and Sherry a couple of different times going through Texas. And all in all, Jim was a great guy, a great friend. I'm gonna miss him dearly. Our equipment, we would swap back and forth. I think we both owned the same equipment for numerous years. He'd have it for a while, I'd have it for a while, and then finally go down the road someplace else. But yeah, Jim was one of a kind. I got to admit that. And like Scott said, we met on 20 meters years back. Another silent key, Al Church. He was a great friend also, but we all got along, all Michiganders. And Jim was Weaver was the one that was the silent key that Jim came to Florida and got the equipment to sell for the estate. So I could go on and on and on, but Jim's ultimate birthday was celebrated in heaven with Christ, and that's and I last time I talked to Jim, we went through his procedure that he was going through, and years back I went through basically the same, but I'm a survivor. I'm sorry that Jim did not make it, but he was good with Christ, and that's the main thing. That's the all important thing. And one of these days, we're going to meet up face to face, and we'll have a in-person QSL. And I guess that about covers it. And back over to you, Ron. Thanks. Oh, the name is Bill, WD8KUF, and we're in the Villages of Florida.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Excuse me. I've got I tell you, with all the water we've had around here, I thought these storms would have washed some of this irritant out of the air, but and this morning it just decided to get worse. So excuse me for clearing my throat all the time and sniffling. But let's see, let's move on. How about Cliff? Cliff is a brother firefighter. So we have a bond outside of amateur radio, and he's in Bemis Point, New York, the west side of New York. Cliff, would you like to say something? Well, maybe he's having audio issues. I think maybe he doesn't have audio. Is that correct, Mike? I see an X next to his speaker.
Yeah, he's muted, Ron. I'll try to give him a
Okay.
bump. He may have.
Okay.
Well,
Well, Cliff,
I'm sorry.
okay. Cliff, if you can maybe see what's up with your mic there, I'll come back to you later. Let's see, James, Casey9YTK. Have no idea which of 3 or 4 states you might be in this morning, but would you like to say something? I think maybe we lost James there somewhere. Anyway, James was another member of the morning group. His home is in Indianapolis, but he spends time in Florida over the winter months and time in Michigan in the summer months. So he's always on the move, and we never know where he's moving to from one day to the next. So I think I hit all the morning group. If I didn't, go ahead and just activate your mic and holler at me. Well, I guess I did. So let me open it up to the club members now. If you have something you'd like to say, now's the time to do it. So some of you I do have video of, and if your camera's working, just wave your hand in front of the camera and I can see that. If you don't, go ahead and okay, I've got Marty, I've got Perry. So let me go to Perry first, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, Perry.
I'm here with my wife. I'm getting an echo a little bit, but I'm here with my wife Barbara, who's also friends with Jim and Sherry. We met Jim and Sherry at Sunday school at First Baptist Church, Louisville. They came to our Sunday school class, and Jim is always very friendly. And he was the new guy, so we got to talking, and he found out I was a ham, and that's how I joined Laura, was through Jim. He invited me to the meeting and to the breakfast, and most of our conversations were about Christ and our studies of the Bible. I would go over to his house and we would discuss ham radio about 3 minutes, and then the rest of it was spent on actually a particular thing he found. It was mentioned in our Sunday school class about how Isaiah was a complete discussion of the New Testament, and this whole series was something he was studying quite ardently, and I put it on my phone and he had it on his phone, so we would discuss this discussion of Isaiah as it prophesies the New Testament and Jesus Christ. He was a very strong Christian, very strong, and very much believed that Christ was his Savior, and I can't stress that enough. That was actually, as he told me, his mission was really to bring Christ to everybody, to at least to discuss Jesus Christ as our Savior. So I want to stress that very much. That was his love. was the Bible, and he would study the Bible constantly, and we would talk on the phone about it. And I'm sorry, I can't. That's all.
Thank you, Perry. Appreciate that. Let's see, Marty, let's go to you next. I saw your hand waving.
Yeah, I'm sure I can do much better than Perry there, but I know I've been a short time member of the club, year or two, but the first day that I met Jim, he made you feel like a friend, and just being around him made you want to be a better person. And he always helped everybody. Yeah, and I really enjoyed his company. So I didn't need to know that he was a religious person, because it showed very loudly in that man. Jim was one of a kind, and I'm going to miss him. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. Let's see, I saw somebody else wave their hand. Roger, okay, go ahead.
Yes, I didn't know Jim that long. It's been my pleasure to serve as an officer in the club with him for about a year now. But I can tell you that Jim was one of the kindest mentors I've had. He always exuded Christ. That it was evident that yeah, he had a close relationship with Christ, and he talked about it. And Jim was also a great radio guy. I mean, he always had a smile on his face. He was there for you when you needed a question answered, and he was kind to us. So we'll miss Jim.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Dale, did you wave your hand? Did I see that earlier? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to say thank you very much. I didn't know Jim very long. I think it was about 5 years, if my date memory is pretty good. So I'd like to say thank you, Jim, for your friendship that came about once I started talking about going to Philmont, and we immediately became friends. Never an unkind word, such a great person, and very helpful. And again, my memory is right. I believe, and talking about RVing, I believe he came through Eagle Nest one time at one of the RV parks. So thank you, Jim, for your friendship. Prayers to the family. I don't know very many of you, hardly at all. I do know Max, and met him. I met him at the several different times, and I was so thrilled that being a digital kind of a ham, that he and Jim won the Raspberry Pi at the last year's Christmas party, and he came running down to let me know, and I was just thrilled and so happy that maybe I could help him and Jim move over into the digital world. From a Philmont point of view, I believe it was 2015 or 16, somewhere in that neighborhood, that he came out to Philmont when we were there and visited us the other day, on myself and the guys, on the Tooth of Time Traders patio, and operated HF for a while. I looked really hard the last few days to find a few pictures, but I just couldn't find anything. So anyway, we had a great time. As I recall, he spent a few hours. I don't recall where he was RVing at, maybe over in Eagle Nest, I'm not sure. So I'd like to say thank you, and again, prayers to the family, and back to you, Ron.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. Anybody else that we have video of that I can see your hand? For those of you that are audio only, if you want to say something. Okay, Steve, I saw you. And any of you that are audio only, if you would like to say something, just open up your mic and get my attention.
Yeah, Frank here. I'd like to say something.
Okay, go ahead, Frank.
You know, I first met Jim when I had just bought a Baofeng radio, and I wasn't even licensed, and I just wanted to have one because they were cheap, and it motivated me enough to finally barely get my technician license, and I threw a few calls out and made a few little contacts, and honestly that radio was about to go to the shelf, and that would have probably been the end of it for me. That would have just been something I would have done on a lark and whatever. And I threw a call out on a repeater that I just saw on a list that happened to be the club repeater, and Jim answered it, and I ended up talking to him for probably an hour. And he just struck me as at first I thought it was just the way he talked, and it was his accent because he's from Michigan, I'm from Ontario, so we're very similar. I mean, it's a different country, but we're right next to each other. So he reminded me of somebody from home, and then I realized the more I knew him, it wasn't that. It was that he was a good person, and he was uncommonly good. And just you can see it in them. You can see it in people that are special like that when they're that good. It comes out. And anyway, he had so much enthusiasm for the hobby that it would rub off on you, and you'd say to yourself, like, I was about to just quit on this, and you see how much enthusiasm he has, how much he loves it, and you say there's got to be something to it if this person likes it so much. And he encouraged me to come to the club, and I did. And there was a field day soon after, and I've only known Jim not even 2 years. I mean, so much in not even 2 years. And he let me try his HF radio, and I thought it was the neatest thing ever. And if he hadn't have done that, well, I would have never went and got my general because of that. And I ended up getting my extra just recently, and I felt I had to tell him that he was the biggest reason why I had ever not just put my first radio back on the shelf and never gone farther. So I wrote him an email just a couple of weeks ago, and I had to let him know that, and I let him know that, and it really made him happy to hear that. So I'm really happy I got that out to him. And what else? I mean, I told him about how much I respected him and the guys that do the work with the scouts, because when I was a Boy Scout almost 45 years ago, I met some hams, and they started my interest in radio when I was just a little boy. And there was a little tiny fire that burned my whole life and never really sparked up. And then I met him, and he sparked it up. And here I am today. And I told him, I said, don't ever feel like you're wasting your time showing young kids how to do it, because you never know. There's going to be one of those young kids, maybe out of 100, maybe just one or two. They'll be 45 years later, they're going to get into it because of what you did. And I think he really liked hearing that. So anyway, I'll miss him. I mean, geez, what a special person he was. And anyways, that's all I got to say. Back to you.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. And congratulations on the extra. I didn't know that. Steve, I saw you wave your hand.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Well, we've heard a lot of testimonials this morning about Jim and his character and what kind of a person he was. I've only known Jim about 4.5, maybe 5 years, but Jim, just like we heard in the testimonials, Jim reached out to me and introduced me to the group here. And I remember the first invite coming over to the breakfasts there at Tierney's, and inviting me to come over there and socialize there with a small group of guys. And we weren't even a club then. We were just a bunch of guys that hung out on a Saturday morning there and talked about ham radio and had a cup of coffee and some eggs and shared stories. It was fun. Didn't have to be formal, and it wasn't structured or anything. It was just a lot of sharing of camaraderie and ham radio. And from those breakfasts, it was clear right away that Jim was reaching out. He reached out to everybody, and he was all about bringing new blood, new people, especially young people, into the hobby, and being a mentor to them, and a great resource to the club. Some of my fondest memories of the field days, whether we had 4 or 5 guys, or if we had 25 guys, people there, we did field days, winter field days, the summer field days. It didn't matter whether we had a large group or small group. We went out there and we did it. We had fun. We shared a lot of stories. The overnights there, working through the field days and stuff at night. It was really fun. A lot of really great bonding. And most recent memory that I'll remember for a long time is last summer field day. We were working there in the afternoon and running some CW there on one of the stations, and Jim came over and sat there and logged for me for the better part of a couple hours. And we had a tremendous amount of fun. I really enjoyed that. I know Jim enjoyed it too. And his interest in digital and in the CW piece of it really peaked. I could tell he was having a lot of fun. I want to just leave a short message with Jim. I want to miss him dearly, and I hope this comes through okay. I'm going to try and play this right now. Yeah, that's all I have, Ron. We'll miss Jim dearly. Back to you.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to cause you're going to have to tell those of us who aren't as adept in CW as you are what you did there.
Okay. Well, the first part of that was QRL, question mark. Are you listening? Are you listening? And we called CQ, WB8YWA, 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 a little pause in there. And thank you, old man, 7373, end of message, end of transmission. Back to you, Ron.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Okay, does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? I guess it's, yeah, go ahead, Clark.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, I've been a member of the club about 4 years. I joined shortly after I got my license, and Jim was one of the first people I met. And first of all, I'm glad to know that he is at peace with his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We can take comfort in that. But I got to know Jim over the years, and he was just an excellent fellow. I mean, he was somebody when it came to ham radio, he knew more than all the rest of us, but it wasn't something that ever made him, try to make himself feel superior or anything, but it was always willing to share his knowledge in a encouraging way to help us grow. And I was especially thankful for Jim at the special events like field day and things like that, where he would bring out his equipment and set things up and give us opportunities, like myself and even like my son. When he'd come out, he was always encouraging Benjamin to get on the air. And so it's just he was good as a friend, also as a ham, and just good at encouraging us and being there and reaching out and helping others and just being, truly showing a servant's heart. And for that, I'll always remember him. So from one old Southern Baptist to another old Southern Baptist, thank you for a life well lived, Jim.
Thank you, Clark. Anybody else that would like to say something? Don't see any hands waving, but Bill, I see your mic opened up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, we got two Bills. So Bill Miller, go ahead.
Okay, Ron, very good. Well, last conversation with Mike a while back, I guess this last week, Mike commented that Jim was probably setting up a station in heaven as we spoke. One of Jim and I really, what we wanted to do was we wanted to make contact on 2-meter sideband from Florida to Texas. We've talked many times on 6 meters, but I told Mike that if all goes well, keep my antenna up, pointed toward up heaven, and one of these days, Jim and I might make that 2-meter sideband contact. So you never know. But anyways, and also this goes out to Sherry and James and the family. Hang in there, gang. It's rough, but it's doable. And love you all. 7-3.
Thank you, Bill. And now the other Bill McNichol. I saw your mic go on.
Good morning, everybody. I am not worthy of really saying anything because I haven't known Jim that long, but I noticed that he had tremendous influence on everybody in all ways. Honesty through Christ and ham. Jim and Steve were working HF. Jim was working 40 at the Boy Scout. As a new ham, I was watching the two of them, and the two of them, especially Jim, caused me to get very interested in a lifelong hobby now, HF. So he had influence there. Also, my extreme condolences to the family, and also to all of the friends who dearly miss him and knew him for a long time. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Mike, go ahead. Mike EVT.
Oh, thanks, Ron. Very kind words about Jim. I was blessed to meet Jim in January of 2016, and our first attraction came. We were at a antenna build at the club. LL Woods, I believe, is the one that's over behind Jody's house. But our interest was in antennas a lot, and he noticed that on my mobile rig, we both had similar taste. We run Hustler antennas and have done that for many years. Our conversation started about that, and then we both realized that we were both licensed in 1975, and our call signs were similar. I had a 5 call, he had an 8 call, and from that we just grew as great friends. I came to realize that we had similar interest in work too. Jim's was in building automation and controls, and mine was in the electrical industry, and and we both did several projects at DFW. And after we talked about that a little bit, we realized that we were actually in some of the same coordination meetings and didn't even know each other at the time. So we had that in common, and it's just been a blessing to know this man. He's brought so much to my life, and him and his family have become very close to me. We've had some great experiences together, many trips with our wives and in ham radio, and I consider him to be like a brother to me, and he will dearly be missed for sure. I think one of my most memorable experiences, and we've had so many, together and together with the family, is we were licensed in the same year, and we both studied and took our extra class exam together. We both passed our exam together last year after being a ham for 40 plus years, and I will never forget that day as long as I live. It was just very special. Thanks everybody for your kind words, and I know you will remember Jim for forever. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Mike. Bill McNichol, would you mute your mic, please? Okay, one last call. Anybody else have something they'd like to say?
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you. This has been beautiful. Jim loved each one of y'all. And our family thanks y'all so much. I know he's with Jesus, but it's difficult to hear all these sweet words. And I know his love for ham radio, and I know his love for helping other people. And James and Robin, and Jody, and the grandkids really appreciate this. And thank y'all for loving us.
Thank you, Sherry. I think I will speak for each and every one of us. We're here for you. If there's anything at all that we can do for you or anyone else in the family, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call. We're here for you. Yeah, I didn't say my piece about Jim. I was waiting till the last, and it's probably not the best till last, but anyway, I first met Jim when he came to a club meeting when we were still meeting up at the Fat Cow Barbecue Shop up here on Valley Ridge Parkway. I hadn't been in the club but a month or two when Jim came, and I was the first hand he shook when he came in the door. And from there, it's been a great relationship. We have become fast friends, friends in Christ, brothers in Christ. I had some, most of you know, I had some pretty serious back surgery here several years ago. And back at that time, I was only a tech, and my whole purpose in getting licensed as a tech was to support the city's emergency operations center during weather events. And I had no desires to go any further in amateur radio. I really didn't have any desires to join a club, but I joined Laura. I got my arm twisted by another individual, and I joined, and boy, am I glad I did. Because had I not, I probably wouldn't have met Jim. We've been fast friends over that period of time. After I had that surgery, I was bored. Boy, I was housebound. I couldn't get. The only thing I could do was get out and walk up and down the street. I wasn't allowed to walk in the car or ride in the car. I certainly wasn't allowed to drive. And Jim called me one day. He says, I've got a deal for you. I says, what's that? And he says, well, I know you're not interested in advancing in the hobby, but he says, I got something that might occupy your time a little bit. And I says, well, what's that? And he says, well, just let me bring it over. So he came over, rang the doorbell, and I opened the door, and there he was with HF radio and a bundle of wire in his hand. He set up that HF radio on my dining room table and gave me a 2-bit tour of how to operate it. And from there, the rest is history. I went on to get my general, and when he and Mike passed their extra here last year, he started ribbing me about getting my extra. And I haven't done that yet. I'm a procrastinator in some things, and that's one thing that I am. But I promise you, Jim, I'll get her done, and we'll get that license advanced here in the very near future. It's I made some notes just so I wouldn't forget anything, and that the only other thing I had was, Mike talked about us going to Orlando. Those were awesome trips. But one of the things we did in Orlando was spend a lot of time going to the flea market down there. And I think it was the last time we were there, which was in 2019. We were, it was, I believe, the last afternoon that we were there, and going down one of the side streets where the flea market was. And there was a guy had the trunk of his car open, and Jim walked over to him and says, what you got? And he had a D74A that he was wanting to sell, and he had not only the radio, but he had everything that went with it, along with manuals and so forth. So Jim was, doing like you do at flea markets, talking to him about it, saying, well, I don't know, and working on it. But old Mike was standing in the background, and Mike was just itching to get in there and buy that radio. He had his hand in his pocket, and it was wrapped around a wad of $100 bills. He was wanting that radio pretty bad. Well, Jim finally bought the radio from the gentleman, and ended up making Mike carry half of that printed material that the guy had around with him for the rest of the day, and hauling it home. But that was a lot of fun watching him bargain with this guy and buying that radio. That we had a lot of fun together, and I miss him, and I will continue to miss him. But we will see each other again, I'm sure. So with that, that's my my 2-bit. I see somebody down here at the bottom, and I can't make you out. Steve, bottom right-hand person has a mic turned on, and I can't see the the initials or what that is. Can you help me out there?
Let's see. I'm looking here at the bottom.
Bottom
I
right.
got mine on, Ron.
Yeah, I got you, Mike, but there's another individual that has their mic turned on.
Let's see. No, I see Mike and I see Bill. Oh no, I don't see. I see myself, Mike, and caller number 2. Who's caller 2? Caller 2, come again.
Well, okay.
I don't know who that is. Sorry.
Okay.
I thought they said something, but
I did too. Okay. We'll go back to Mike, EBT.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back in on your comments, Ron. You that was a Kenwood radio, and that's, you know, Jim's an ICOM guy, but I had to try to jump on that. And you know, James has made a comment that comes to mind. He's made it a couple of times, and the last time was the other day when we were taking Jim in. He didn't think I heard the comment, but I did. He said he looked at Janice and he said those guys are like 2 peas in a pot. And so I guess I'm gonna have to pick up where Jim left off and stay on you about that extra class license, and I'll sure do that, buddy. And my pot's half full right now, and I'm gonna miss that man tremendously, but I know he's looking out for us. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll close with that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. One last time for anybody. Well, I have one final thing to do.
Okay, Ron, you got me?
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, one last comment. Then I'll shut up.
No problem.
I think it was 2 years ago, 2018. You and Mike and Jim, all 3 of you guys came out after the Orlando swap, and up on the roof you went for me and repaired my 40-meter antenna, 40 and 20-meter antenna. Boy, that was the last time I saw Jim and you fellas there. So, anyways, I sure do appreciate that. And all 3 of you are super duper. I mean, you're top notch. And I want to thank you guys for that. That's it. I'm gone. I'm going to get myself some breakfast. 7-3, all.
7-3, Bill, thanks for your comments. And yeah, we love you too, believe me. Okay, one final thing, and we'll close this. Okay, Perry, I see you waving. Go ahead.
I wanted to add that Jim and Mike put up first of all, they showed me how well a Hustler antenna works. And then both Jim and Mike not only set up my antenna and tuned it, but even built parts. Mike built parts for it. And Jim and Mike came over to my house and completely set it up. So, I mean, they were like 2 peas in a pod, I agree. And, but boy, they sure gave of themselves, and Jim gave of himself just totally. And I just wanted to say that I was a brand new member of the club and was having trouble with antennas, and that's just the type of person Jim was. He just gave of himself completely. And I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Yeah, I think we all have been down that road with Jim and Mike. I wouldn't have antennas up if it wasn't for those 2 guys either. So anyway, if you're near your VHF radio, turn it up a little bit. I'm on the 145, 170. WBAYWA. This is W5 LBC. WB8YWA, KF5OMH. Nothing heard. WB8YWA has gone silent. Rest in peace, my friend, till we meet again. W5LBC clear. Okay, that takes care of the remembrance portion of the meeting. The morning group guys, thank you very much for joining. James rather, and Sherry, Jody, Max, Robin, thank you all for joining. And we're recording this, or we did record it, so I will get that to you in the coming week or so. And thank you very, very much for joining us this morning.